If Olamide had known that the heavy, suffocating winter parka she was wearing would eventually become her personal prison in the blazing heat of a Nigerian afternoon, she would have never crushed those sleeping pills. She would have never looked at her identical twin sister's visa with the venomous eyes of a serpent, and she certainly would have never boarded that international flight expecting a life of luxury. But Olamide was a woman who believed that the universe owed her a soft life, a woman who thought that destiny could be stolen simply by putting on a modest dress and tying her hair in a humble bun. What happens when the architect of a wicked deception realizes that the paradise she stole is actually a frozen purgatory designed specifically to test her greatest weaknesses? What happens when a slay queen steals a golden ticket only to discover that the man she thought was a naive ticket to wealth is actually a billionaire hiding in plain sight, setting a trap for women exactly like her? This is a story of how an entitled heart booked a first-class ticket to absolute, undeniable humiliation. In the bustling, vibrant heart of Ibadan lived the Fijabi twins, two women who shared the exact same face but possessed spirits that resided in entirely different universes. Olamiposi was the gentle breeze, a dedicated nurse at the general hospital whose hands brought comfort to the ailing and whose voice was a soothing balm to the elderly. She was the kind of woman who greeted the neighborhood gatekeeper with the same profound respect she reserved for the hospital's chief medical director. She wore her simple nursing scrubs with a quiet, undeniable dignity, content with a life of service and honest labor. Olamide, on the other hand, was a raging, restless wildfire of vanity. She viewed physical labor as a curse meant for lesser mortals. Her days were consumed by the endless scroll of social media, studying the lives of the wealthy, leaving desperate comments under pictures of private jets, and curating an aesthetic of unearned opulence. She was a woman who believed that her identical beauty was a currency that should buy her the world without her ever having to lift a finger to work for it. The delicate balance of their home shattered the day Dr. Femi entered Olamiposi's life through the digital glowing screen of her phone. Femi was a Nigerian veterinarian practicing abroad, a quiet, profoundly observant man who sought a partner whose heart was as pure as her intentions. For 6 months, they nurtured a relationship across oceans, speaking of family, faith, and simple futures. Olamiposi fell deeply in love with his grounding kindness, while Femi fell for her total lack of pretense. Olamide watched these evening video calls from the shadows of their shared room, her jealousy simmering into a toxic, consuming rage. She would mock her sister relentlessly, utterly bewildered as to why Olamiposi would waste her time talking to a man in a foreign land without immediately demanding the latest designer phone or a wire transfer. To Olamide, a man abroad was an ATM, not a companion, and she viewed her sister's genuine affection as a pathetic waste of a highly lucrative opportunity. The true weight of this opportunity arrived on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in the form of a bright yellow courier envelope. When Olamiposi tore open the package, the contents spilled out like a promise of paradise. A crisp, new passport bearing a freshly stamped spousal visa, a plane ticket purchased for that very Saturday, and a sparkling engagement ring. Femi had arranged everything, paying for a seamless transition for his beloved to join him in what he described as a peaceful, quiet life abroad. Olamiposi wept tears of overwhelming gratitude, thanking the heavens for a man of such magnificent action. But from across the room, Olamide stared at the documents, her mind calculating a dark and unforgivable mathematics. They were identical. The photograph on the passport could easily pass for her own face. The venomous thought took root instantly. Why should a woman with no fashion sense, a woman who would be content boiling water in a foreign land, get to experience the ultimate soft life? Olamide convinced herself that she was the rightful heir to the dollars, the shopping sprees, and the glamorous European lifestyle that this ticket promised. That evening, the serpent struck under the guise of sisterly celebration. Olamide, feigning overwhelming joy for her sister's fortune, offered to handle the evening's dinner, purchasing a large, chilled bottle of locally brewed Zobo drink. But before she handed the vibrant red liquid to her sister, she meticulously crushed 4 heavy, potent sleeping tablets into the glass, watching the white powder dissolve into the sweet darkness. She offered a toast to new beginnings, smiling a cold, dead smile as Olamiposi drank deeply. Within half an hour, the gentle nurse was slumped unconscious against the living room sofa, her breathing heavy and slow. With the clinical detachment of a hardened criminal, Olamide dragged the dead weight of her own flesh and blood across the compound, hauling her sister into an abandoned windowless storeroom packed with dusty yams and forgotten boxes. She locked the heavy iron padlock from the outside, entombing the rightful bride in suffocating darkness. The transformation was swift and ruthlessly efficient. Olamide stood before the mirror and scrubbed away the heavy layers of her signature glamorous makeup. She pulled her hair back into the identical, unassuming bun her sister always wore. She stripped off her provocative clothing and slipped into Olamiposi's modest, conservative travel dress. Staring into the glass, the Slay Queen was gone, replaced by a perfect, flawless replica of the humble nurse. The next morning she fed her parents a masterfully constructed lie, claiming Olamide had traveled to a distant village to cool her jealous heart. With their blessings ringing in her ears, the impostor made her way to the international airport in Lagos. As she handed the stolen passport to the immigration officer, her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs, but the officer simply nodded and waved her through. She walked toward her departure gate with the swagger of a conquering queen, assuming the boarding pass labeled for Helsinki was merely a brief stepping stone to the towering skyscrapers and luxury boutiques of a bustling European metropolis. When the massive aircraft finally touched down at the Vantaa airport, Olamide strutted toward the automatic arrival doors, fully expecting to be greeted by a chauffeur in a tailored suit holding a placard, or at the very least, her new husband standing beside a gleaming luxury SUV. Instead, the sliding glass parted, and the brutal reality of her stolen destiny slapped her forcefully in the face. The cold was not just a temperature, it was a physical assault, a biting, malicious entity that sliced straight through her modest dress and settled deep within her bones. There were no skyscrapers. There was no bustling metropolis. Standing in the arrival hall was Femi, engulfed in a massive utilitarian winter parka, wearing thick, heavy boots that looked as though they had waded through mud and snow for decades. He smelled strongly of pine needles and raw earth. He rushed forward to embrace her, and as Olamide was crushed against his freezing, bulky coat, she looked outside to see his vehicle. It was not a luxury car. It was a battered, reliable, aggressively unglamorous pickup truck. The journey from the airport plunged the imposter into a terrifying nightmare of endless, suffocating white isolation. For hours, they drove away from civilization, deep into the frozen, unforgiving wilderness of Lapland. Olamide's desperate questions about shopping malls and city lights were met with Femi's cheerful explanations about their peaceful life on the farm, surrounded by absolutely nothing but silent reindeer and howling huskies. When they finally pulled up to the property, it was a rustic log cabin. The interior was violently simple, stripped of any velvet extravagance, boasting only heavy wooden chairs, thick animal skin rugs, and a roaring fireplace. Before she could even process the horror of her geographical isolation, Femi presented his welcoming surprise. A pregnant husky named Luna was going into labor, and he expected his devoted, medically trained wife to dive directly into the blood and mess to assist with the delivery. Olamide, a woman who paid manicurists exorbitant fees to polish her nails, stood trembling in the freezing barn, dropping bloody towels and screaming at the sight of bodily fluids. The subsequent days were not a honeymoon, they were an excruciating descent into a manual labor correctional facility. The Slay Queen of Ibadan was violently introduced to the reality of the freezing tundra. Every morning at 4 o'clock, Femi's alarm shrieked, signaling the start of mandatory, rigorous morning devotion. Olamide was forced to drop to the freezing, unforgiving hardwood floor, her knees screaming in agony as Femi prayed with the ferocity of a warrior for over an hour. Following the prayers came the unimaginable torture of shoveling mountains of snow from the pathways. Her stolen, expensive, bone-straight wig froze into pathetic, stiff icicles that clattered against her face. She was exhausted, entirely broken by the sheer physical demand of a life she had never prepared for, constantly shivering in an environment that seemed actively hostile to her very existence. The woman who had stolen a ticket to paradise found herself shackled to a frozen, grueling hellscape. The absolute breaking point, the moment the elaborate masquerade completely unraveled, occurred in the kitchen. Femi, craving a taste of home, requested that she prepare the legendary egusi soup she had bragged about cooking for entire hospital wards. Olamide, whose culinary expertise began and ended with boiling water, stared at the pantry ingredients with mounting, breathless panic. Driven by sheer desperation and profound ignorance, she took a pot of freezing cold water and indiscriminately dumped in the raw, unblended melon seeds. She tossed in the rock-hard, unsoaked stockfish, added a handful of unwashed, gritty crayfish, and threw in 2 whole, unpeeled onions for good measure. She cranked the heat to the maximum setting and abandoned the chaotic abomination to boil while she sat in the living room attempting to salvage her chipped nail polish. 30 minutes later, a horrific, offensive stench wafted through the delicate pine scent of the cabin, smelling less like a traditional delicacy and more like a profound cultural insult. Dinner was a slow, agonizing execution. Femi sat at the wooden table and stared down into the bowl of watery, pale disaster. Clumps of raw melon seeds floated aimlessly like abandoned life rafts, while a thick, angry layer of unmixed palm oil gathered at the surface. He picked up his fork and tapped the stockfish. It clattered loudly against the ceramic, as impenetrable and hard as a river stone. He slowly lowered his hands, and the warm, loving gaze he had held for months vanished, replaced by the sharp, clinical, terrifying observation of a man who suddenly sees everything. He calmly and meticulously listed her failures. He noted her paralyzing fear of blood in the barn, a strange trait for an experienced nurse. He noted her inability to sing a single hymn during their agonizing morning devotions, and most damning of all, he mentioned the tiny, colorful butterfly tattoo he had spotted on her ankle the day before. The real Olamiposi, a woman whose body was an untouched temple, despised needles and abhorred tattoos. As Olamide stammered, frantically attempting to construct a fragile lie about adopting new European cooking techniques and getting a surprise tattoo, the heavy silence of the cabin was shattered by the sharp, rapid pinging of Femi's mobile phone. Notification after notification flooded his screen. He picked up the device, his knuckles turning stark white as he read the incoming message. It was an email originating from a dusty cyber cafe back in Ibadan. Attached was a photograph of the real, authentic Olamiposi, her face streaked with dirt and exhaustion, holding up that day's local newspaper to prove her timeline. She had finally broken free from the dark, yam-filled storeroom. The caption was a desperate plea for salvation, exposing the imposter sitting across the table. Femi slowly turned the glowing screen toward Olamide. The evidence was absolute, undeniable, and utterly devastating. Olamide's legs gave way beneath the table, and she collapsed into a pathetic, weeping mess, begging for mercy, pleading that she simply wanted a better life and was willing to learn to love the snow. It was then that Femi delivered the final crushing blow of karmic justice. He did not yell. He did not strike her. He simply sat back and revealed the true depth of the monumental mistake she had made. He informed her that he was not just a struggling veterinarian hiding in a freezing forest. He was Dr. Femi Adedoyin, the primary heir to the legendary Adedoyin shipping empire, a family that practically owned the financial district of Victoria Island. He had exiled himself to the harshest, most isolated corner of Lapland, specifically to escape the shallow, greedy, status-obsessed women of Lagos. He had built this frozen fortress as a grueling test to find a woman who would love him for his soul, not his unimaginable bank account. Olamiposi had passed every single test of character with flying colors. Olamide, in her arrogant, desperate attempt to steal a golden ticket, had stolen her way directly into the test she was genetically engineered to fail. She had thrown away a life of legitimate billionaire royalty because she couldn't stand the sight of a little snow and hard work. Femi's revenge was not to abandon her to the Finnish authorities, but to subject her to the ultimate walk of shame. He booked her a flight back to Nigeria, but not a direct, comfortable journey. He purchased the cheapest, most agonizing multi-stop ticket available, ensuring her misery was prolonged. Days later, Olamide stumbled out of the Lagos International Airport and into the punishing, blazing heat of the Nigerian sun. Because she had packed only for the freezing tundra and possessed absolutely no money, she was forced to wear the massive, heavy winter parka all the way back to her hometown. As she trudged through the dusty streets of Ibadan, sweat pouring down her face in humiliating rivers, the local market women and Okada riders erupted into uproarious laughter. They mocked the arrogant Slay Queen, shouting questions about where she had hidden the European snow. She walked through her neighborhood, not as a triumphant expatriate, but as a spectacular, sweating monument to greed and failure. When Olamide finally dragged her exhausted, defeated body into her family compound, the final nail was hammered into the coffin of her pride. Sitting on the veranda, looking utterly radiant and surrounded by an aura of peaceful victory, was Olamiposi. Beside her sat a sharp, impeccably dressed corporate lawyer holding a leather briefcase. There would be no police intervention, provided Olamide accepted the terms of her surrender. To pay back every single currency note Femi had wasted on her fraudulent travel, the Slay Queen was sentenced to hard labor. She was forced to take a job in the blistering, steamy laundry room of the General Hospital, scrubbing stained bedsheets by hand until the monumental debt was cleared. Weeks later, a massive, gleaming black luxury SUV rolled into the compound. Femi stepped out, dressed in the immaculate, expensive attire of the billionaire he truly was. He walked right past Olamide, who was sweating over a washboard, not even granting her the dignity of a glance. He took Olamiposi away to a life of unimaginable splendor in Abuja, leaving the impostor to scrub the stains of her own profound wickedness, learning the hard way that you can steal a boarding pass, but you can never, ever steal a destiny.